Good evening and welcome to Humour and how to bring it into your business life. Because there's no such thing as an unfunny business. In fact, most of our businesses are pretty damn funny, especially when we go through those rough times. And boy, have we been through a few rough times. I'm Dante St. James. Let's get underway and explore the world of humour when it comes to business. Now, the Harvard Business Review showed that research showed that any sense of humour, where it's shown in leaders, is seen to give a 27% more motivating and admired response than those who don't joke around. So leaders who show humor, 27% more motivating and admired, and their employees are 15% more engaged, and their teams are more than twice as likely to solve a creativity challenge or a challenge that involves thinking a little bit deeper than just simply going yes, no, what did we do before, going into something a lot more creative with what they're looking to solve. That's from the Harvard Business Review. I trust those kind of words. Today we're going to look at the role of humor, how being funny is a bit of a superpower, and how to learn how to be funny by bringing funny into things like a business communication. And we're going to explore about how you can learn to be funny, because let's face it, we want to know how to be funny. Otherwise we wouldn't be in this webinar right now. And if you're on the live webinar right now, you can ask questions, you can post in the Q&A, join in the chat channel, anything like that. I'd love to have a chat with you. And if you're watching on YouTube, then feel free to go through to where we can see everything on the YouTube channel of my own, Dante St. James, and through that of the Business Station as well. This is brought to you by Business Station, the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. In WA, it's presented by Business Station. Just looking to see if anyone's watching me do my show. I'm in a motel room in Alice Springs, which is the hilarious comedy of my life at the moment. No heater, middle of winter, got down to 2 degrees last night. Yeah, not impressed by that. Regional Development Australia, Brisbane in Queensland, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. Yes, you can watch this again later, YouTube through Business Station or my name, Dante St. James. Just go to YouTube, type in either of those names, and you'll find a whole heap of fantastic stuff, including this one in around about 2 hours' time. So what is the role of humor? Well, humor, I guess, is one of those things where you go, well, it's a bit of an art, but is it a skill? Do you learn how to be funny? Or are some people just naturally seen to be funny? Is it a skill you can learn over time? Or is it just something which people are or aren't? People just are funny, or they are absolutely not funny. So I'm going to go through a few myths here that sort of take you through this process of, understanding what people have said about humor, but what is not actually necessarily true. The first myth is that funny people are the life of the party and they are naturally extroverted. We look at people like Robin Williams and think, wow, he must have just been the most amazing person to be around. Truth be told, he was actually quite depressed, had substance abuse issues, and actually was naturally introverted. But when he put on the character of Mork from Mork, or put on the character of, the teacher from Dead Poets Society, or put on Mrs. Doubtfire, he then came to life. But Robin Williams himself was not the life of the party. He was not naturally extroverted. He actually was absorbed. He had to become a character and was actually quite exhausted at the end of the day. Another myth is that funny people are creative and come from the arts. Now, that's Kath Day Knight from Kath and Kim, or Jane Turner as her real name is actually a lawyer. She actually started her life in law, and that's where she came from. Like many others, Steve Vizard, former lawyer, Sean McAuliffe, former lawyer as well. In fact, you'll see this time and time again, how many people were lawyers before they became comedians. In fact, Rebel Wilson slogged away through a law degree long before she became the Rebel Wilson that we know and love her to be now. Another myth is that humor is inappropriate in business, and that could not be further from the truth. This workplace we're looking at is one of the rooms at Google in one of their offices, and they've got a slippery slide in there because why not? And they've got often things in bright colors. Humor and whimsical approach to things helps create creativity, helps bring people together to be able to work better with each other, and allows people to be more free and more themselves in what is traditionally an environment where I suppose they think, well, life is hard here, life is tough here in business. We can't really be ourselves or be funny in any way, shape, or form. Another one is that no one will take me seriously. This could not be further from the truth, could it? Barack Obama constantly, quipping jokes, throwing funnies, cuddling kids, cuddling his wife, doing amazing things when all the whole time, really, Barack Obama was the president of the United States of America for 2 whole terms. So that's 8 years he was a president, and people took him mighty seriously. They might not have liked him for many reasons, but they certainly took him seriously as the president of the United States. The other area that people get stuck on is that there's nothing fun about what they do. I think the series 6 Feet Under, which was been over for quite a long time now, for over 15 years, was all about a family that had a funeral home. And the funeral home was very much about this idea that people, that even in the depths and darkness of the drama and the most dark, morbid place you could find, there was a lot of humor that went on. It was a dark humor, that's for sure, but it was a humor all the same. Another myth is it takes too much time and costs too much money to have humor in your workplace. But all it really takes is something like a blackboard or a chalkboard where you can put on a really funny message. You don't even have to come up with it yourself. Look it up online, write it down, and you can cause a smile in anyone's day who happens to be passing by your particular business. So there's plenty of ways for you to be able to express a little bit of fun in what you're doing. And another myth is that no one cares, but I'd say, no, that's not true. People do care about humor. In fact, in our very boring everyday lives, in our offices, in our workplaces, in our trucks, in our cars, what are we always looking for? Some kind of escapism. And humor is the ultimate escapism, isn't it? It's a way of bringing in some joy to a soulless place, to bring some color to something that's just gray, to bring in a little bit of fun to a world and a life which is just not really that much fun at all. We're talking about the ability to listen to podcasts from comedians, to watch comedy TV shows. Comedy movies are the best kind of movies we see. They're the ones that consistently perform well again and again and again, and we find we keep going back to them. Legally Blonde is a movie that's so awesome to watch. And it's a silly movie, it's a funny movie, but we watch it again and again. I've probably seen it about 10 times myself. People tend to flock around those who are funny because they can relax. They can be themselves, and it's usually that sensitivities are taken away, and there's the ability for people to laugh and enjoy each other's company without feeling like the world is crashing down around them. That's why people care about people being funny. But aside from that, there are unexpected perks of being the funny person. There's a certain amount of, I know, benefit that comes with actually being a little bit funny. So let's look at how humor can actually strengthen relationship bonds by creating new opportunities for conversation, helping us to break the ice, to become far more conversational with people, and to engage with them in a much more friendly way than we would if we just ignored them altogether. It helps to break tension. And that's a really important thing because in serious situations at home, at work, anywhere, a very quick joke delivered really sensitively and in the right context and timing can really help break down that tension so that there's not quite so much of a tense situation anymore. We also find some benefits in humor, removing negative emotions. Humor interrupts that spiral downwards of when there's an argument about to happen, when there's a fight to be able to go on, when there's things happening that are about to go horribly wrong. Humor interrupts. It's a pattern interrupter. It's a circuit breaker. It helps you to not be focused so heavily upon the problem at hand, but makes you go, wait, stop, take a break, get a chance to get some relief from this onslaught of negative emotions and think of something different to take your mind off that, even for just a moment. And it can help you to create some new creativity, some new ways for you to be able to think differently, to think more positively. Laughter releases endorphins. Just the act of laughing, even the act of smiling can help release endorphins. I'm smiling right now. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I've been sitting in this stupid motel room for the whole day trying to get work done. I've got a whole lot of work coming up tonight. But a bit of laughter has caused endorphins to make me go, I feel generally good. I feel generally awake and alive. And once I'm finished this particular thing, I've got one more call to do, and then I'm going to go for dinner. I'm going to eat something I probably shouldn't eat because why the hell not? Humor temporarily even relieves pain. It's hard to focus on pain when you're laughing. It's hard to focus on how much it hurts when you're actually laughing at something. And smiling, even just this act of a smile, helps you to feel better. It's a whole thing of, I call it fake it before you fake it till you make it. The ability to be able to smile at a situation, even though the last thing you want to do is smile. The last thing you want to do is, smile at a situation when you don't feel particularly happy. You want to just make sure you're going, oh, wow, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. And then just by smiling, you actually start the process of feeling better. Smiling does help you feel better. Both the endorphins are part of that. And it's also a more of a psychological response where you're taking your focus away from something which is negative and putting it onto something that's either neutral or more positive that does that circuit breaker I was talking about. It breaks that cycle. And then, of course, humor also makes you more attractive. Now, Jack Black, not a particularly attractive man, not really at all. But for some reason, because he's a funny guy, he becomes more attractive. I had a friend who thought he was the sexiest man alive. Now, Jack Black, by no stretch of the imagination of even his own, thinks that he is even remotely sexy. But this friend of mine, this female friend of mine, found him absolutely irresistible, thought he was the hottest man on the planet. And it was all came down to his personality. Personality does count for something when it comes to attractiveness. People can be, not particularly attractive. Adam Sandler, not an attractive man, but suddenly became attractive when he became a comedian. Ben Stiller, again, not a particularly attractive man, but became a Hollywood heartthrob simply because he had an ability to convey comedy. Comedy makes you more attractive. You get hotter just by being funnier. Humor also reduces stress. Now, endorphin release, it will lower your blood, the endorphin release will lower blood pressure. And when you're focused on being funny, like we said before, the interruption, the circuit breaker, the spiral breaker, when you're focused on being funny, you're focused away from the other stressors of life. So that you're not then in that place where you're going, oh, there's stress that I've got all this work to do. Oh my God. But when I'm cracking a joke or I'm watching something funny or I'm watching something YouTube that I find entertaining, then it reduces the stress, allowing me to go, actually, life's not so bad. I can get back to work now and successfully get that work done. Humor also reveals your hidden intelligence. Funny people are smart people because it takes a quick, witty thinker to be funny in everyday situations. Funny people have to be smart to be witty. They have to be having that, they have to have that position in their life and that confidence in themselves to be funny, even when it feels like things aren't very funny at all. It helps to be really smart, to be witty, and it helps to be really smart, to be quick to deliver funny one liners. And it also takes a lot of general knowledge to understand the humor in context because you've got to have all sorts of, yeah, empathy. Empathy is a very, very powerful thing when it comes to humor. To understand what a crowd is thinking, to understand what a room is thinking, what the vox populi is, or what the thoughts are of the population, what the zeitgeist is thinking, takes a lot of general knowledge. It takes a lot of research. It takes reading the news, listening to this, listening to that, reading, taking notice of what's going on allows you to be a lot smarter. So you are a smart person if you're funny because you need to be able to balance a lot of balls in the air at once. Will they be offended? Will they laugh? Will they think I'm smart? Will they actually appreciate this joke? Is this appropriate? Is this a dark joke? Is this going to offend someone? All those things are going around at the same time. You have to be a very, very smart person to be able to do that kind of thing. Then humor also indicates a level of success. It indicates that you don't really care what people think about you because when successful people really don't really care what people largely think about them. Think of people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, of all the things that people are always saying about them. Do you think they even really care about that? What are they going to do? Cry themselves to sleep in their pots, in their beds of gold and their money mattresses? Like, That's just not even coming across the paths of successful people. Successful people are usually happy to take risks because they know they've got a backup plan. That if things go wrong, it's going to be okay. I've got other things that are going right. It's generally unsuccessful people who tend to stick to the background. It's unsuccessful people who are afraid to try. It's unsuccessful people who spend really big amounts of time caring what people think about them. So, humor, comedy, the ability to be funny, to take a risk and tell that joke, it indicates a level of success that comes from a level of confidence. So, how do we go about this whole I want to learn how to be funny thing? Well, the first thing you need to understand is what your style of humor is. Before you start sort of inserting all that humor into your social media posts, into your blog posts, into your corporate meetings, into your newsletters, and into your advertising, you really need to understand what kind of comedian you are. Now, oh my goodness, I probably scared the crap out of everyone. You don't have to become a comedian to be funny. In fact, most comedians are not funny at all outside of their job. They get off stage and they're normal, just like you and I. So, what is your style of humor? Well, there's a few different styles of humor, four of them, in fact. It's what we call the stand up, the sniper, the sweetheart, and the magnet. Which one are you going to be? There's actually some tests online. So you can just Google what type of comedian am I or what type kind of funny am I? And you'll be able to read that. Now, you'll end up with one of these archetypes, the stand up, the sniper, the sweetheart, the magnet. Let's take a bit of a deeper dive into exactly what these things are. So, first up, let's start off with a stand up. The stand up is bold, they're edgy, they're irreverent, they're sometimes just plain rude. I'm thinking of people like Amy Schumer here. They're not afraid to ruffle a few feathers for a laugh. They'll often say things which are borderline offensive, or they'll say things which expose a hypocrisy in life or in society or in the people who are in power. Some of the people I think about with this, the stand-up would be people like Ross Noble, Jim Owen, Carl Barron, particularly. Michelle Laurie is very, very much this unafraid to ruffle a few feathers kind of person. And Fiona O'Loughlin, she kind of borders on one of our other types, which is the sweetheart, but ultimately quite bold, quite irreverent, and definitely not afraid to ruffle a few feathers. A lot of American stand-up comedians, Irish stand-up comedians will do this as well. They'll often be very much anti-establishment. There's often the bowl where you'll find a lot of the newer, younger comedians stepping into as well. They just generally like to talk about political things. You'll often find this is a political realm. This is where political comedy happens, where a lot of climate change issues are brought up in comedy. The war of the sexes and the genders, the war on pronouns, all these kind of things come up in stand-up comedy. So remember, these kind of people, Michelle Laurie, Fiona O'Loughlin, Carl Barron, Jim Owen, and Ross Noble, your stand-up type comedians. Then there's the sniper. Now, the sniper is a little bit more edgy, very, very sarcastic, often is not particularly liked by a lot of people. And you find this particularly that men really dislike this kind of comedian when they're a woman. And it's really like a gender issue here. It's quite misogynistic that men think this way. It's often because this is a very, very well thought out, well planned, well practiced, and very intelligent kind of humor. So we're talking about people like, and this is one that a lot of guys really dislike, Judith Lucy, for instance. Very smarmy, very edgy and sarcastic, and her jokes aren't necessarily laugh a minute, like an episode of Friends. They're more like it takes a while to get there, and then you hear the end product, and oh my god, that is so funny. That kind of guy. The Friendly Geordies or Jordan Shanks, who has recently been in quite a lot of the news, he comes along the road of being funny, not from the fact that he is particularly charismatic, although he's a very good looking man. So I suppose you could like him just for his look. But he's very much all about that sort of the master of the unexpected dig. Definitely. Although these days he's got such a political agenda behind him that he's very much, you know, who he's going after. It's usually a member of the Liberal or National Party, and he's usually going for something which is going to get, you know, score political points or make a very political statement. So he would be in the same bed as, say, Hannah Gadsby, who's got very political and gender and sexuality based jokes. Jim Jeffries, who's all about being the Aussie who takes the mickey out of Americans for being Americans. And he's got that edgy, sarcastic nuance, very intelligent approach to things like gun control. He's very often talking about the stupidity of America's gun situation and why it's just, you know, it makes no sense to the rest of the world. So the sniper is definitely someone who has a very solid point of view that they don't ever really vary off. They tend to always have this point of view. Hannah Gadsby is very much about you know, she was never going to do another Netflix special because the first one just was so wildly successful, but she did come back and do some more, and she's currently on the road, and I believe she's going to the Darwin Festival in August and is doing a lot of festivals around Australia in the summer months. Jim Jeffries is pretty much on perpetually on tour in America. In fact, I don't even think he lives here anymore. Judith Lucy is always on those kind of paths and was always on things like panels such as how well did you, what is it, the listening show on Channel 10? Oh my God, I just missed that all. Um, the the one where they, oh look, forget about that. I'm never going to come up with it because it's too late in the day for me to remember that thing. So you know, it's about those particular kinds of comedians who just have something really sharp edge to say, and it might offend a few people quite easily. The sweetheart, however, could not be further from the sniper. Earnest, understated, and uses humor that generally lightens the mood a bit, and it's usually quite self-effacing. So we look at people like James Corden, who is all about singing and fun and laughter and happiness and bringing joy to the world. He's not a particularly rude comedian. He's all about seeing the fun in a slapstick kind of way and taking, I guess, you know, he can sing really, really well. He's got some serious pipes on him, but he will always, you know, sit in a car with, say, someone like Lady Gaga, who's got an amazing voice, and then just, you know, take the mess out of himself whilst listening to these incredible people singing. Adam Hills and even Will Anderson tend to be the bit sweetheartish. They quite often will, you know, take a lot of well, they'll face a lot of the well, self-effacement actually is what it's called. They'll actually turn the joke in on themselves. Amy Hetherington, a young comedian up and coming who's done a lot of touring of late around Central and Western Australia. She's the same thing, tells great stories about herself, and that's one of the things that comes with a sweetheart. They'll often turn the comedy in on themselves. So it's not really about a situation out there. It's more about here's what happened to me, and here's me, dumb old me making this stupid old mistake. Rebel Wilson is probably the queen of this, taking a lot of jokes against her size, about her look, about her accent, about this sardonic, laconic kind of laid back humor of just being an Australian in Hollywood and getting to keep her accent because she's just so bad at doing American accents, and she's become quite a worldwide superstar due to that. And then finally, we've got the magnet. That's the expressive, charismatic, the person who just draws you in. It's really easy to make you laugh. We've got the Jerry Seinfelds who are able to deliver stories and quips really, really simply in a very well timed, well rehearsed way. A lot of your old time comedians are very much like this. Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders, Graham Kennedy, where they can just were just such electric personalities. They really draw you in, hence why it's called the magnet. Everyone seemed to like them. No one was particularly offended by them. They were just the kind of people that you would very easily have a laugh at. It'd go down to people like David Letterman, to people like Jimmy Kimmel, or the late night TV host. Rove McManus is the same thing. He just had a nice personality that kind of drew you in, but as far as comedy himself, wasn't all that funny. He just had an expressive, charismatic way about him that drew you into the show no matter what it was you were doing with him. And then you need to learn how to be funny. So how do you actually learn to be funny? This is probably the question that most comedians ask themselves when they first get into the game. Now, some of them suspect they might have some funny things to say. Some of them do it as a dare. I did it once upon a time just because I wanted to be better at my radio show and because I was also sitting across the road, across the desk in my radio studio from an actual comedian who she had done a lot of comedy shows. And I didn't find her particularly funny at all, in fact. But I didn't understand what was funny about her. But she seemed to get a lot of comedy gigs. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to learn what this comedy thing is so I can learn a bit more about what it is to what it takes to actually be funny. So one of the first things you need to do is you need to expose yourself. You need to just get out there. You need to try your comedy on for size. That may mean going and doing a stand-up comedy course in most larger cities within Australia. So Perth, Brisbane, Gold Coast would tend to have these. I did mine in Hobart, but there's tends to be like night courses you can do to learn how to do comedy. And they're really good because they're very hands-on. You try jokes on for size, you practice routines, and then you generally do a comedy show at the end of it all so that you can then try it on in front of people who know your family and friends. Yes. I guess another way for you to try out is to try out your material on a safe crowd. Now, that safe crowd starts off maybe with friends, maybe with your partner, but the offside of doing that with friends and partners is that they are used to a very specific style of you. They're used to a very specific way of you acting and you being. So, this funny person who stands up in front of them and starts cracking jokes, sometimes about that very family that they're in, that may not go down as well as you may think it could. So instead of maybe trying out your material on friends and family, just record yourself into your computer or phone and listen to yourself back. So practice your jokes, record it on video and your phone, and then watch yourself back. Now, the key here is to not be so stupidly over analytical at every move you make. The idea is to see what the timing sounds like and then compare it. Now, one of the ways I learned to do it is that I would re-deliver jokes of other comedians and follow their timing and follow their delivery. So use it in my voice, but say it back in such a way that it was following what their vocal intonations were, their ups and downs, the sing-song of their voice, and then using that as the way to, I guess, build myself into some kind of pattern and learn how to, deliver a joke in the best possible way. So I was like, would number one, do it in such a way that was really, really good, but then also be able to do it in such a way that I was able to, I guess, deliver like a comedian should deliver, rather than delivering in such a way that you're not able to even get anywhere near the kind of delivery that a comedian would give. So yeah, trying to practice by copying others and copying the way they deliver is a good way of practicing what generally people enjoy when they are trying on comedy. Personal stories are at the core of the sweetheart. So that sweetheart we had, it's all about telling stories of things that happen to you. So revealing a weakness or a quirk or something that you do that's different to what other people do, something that you do that's like, this is this weird thing I do. And I tried it on this morning with a crowd. I was talking about the way that I eat my wheat bix in the morning. I take wheat bix, I get boiling water from the kettle, I soften up the wheat bix, then I put on the milk, very, very carefully so not to break it up into porridge. And then I do a swirl in a spiral of honey on top of it all. So it's nice and sweet and tasty. To me, that's a quirky thing that I do. I don't know where I learned to do that. In fact, I don't think I ever actually learned to do that. I just started doing it out of something in myself. I don't know why, but that's what I do, and I find that quite quirky. And when someone saw me do it, who was living with me, they found it quite quirky as well, and gave it a good old laugh and said, don't know why you're doing it, but that looks a little bit weird, boyo. Personal stories, embarrassing facts, stories about growing up as awkward teenagers, first dates gone wrong. All those kind of stories are fantastic for you to be able to introduce someone to your life in a short, sharp way that's also in that position where it makes you not be so, I guess, terrible at not so terrible at, I guess, what I'm trying to say is not taking yourself so seriously. That's what it is. You don't really want to be in that position where you take yourself so seriously, because you want to position yourself as someone who's approachable, someone who is nice, that people like, and in a way that people feel safe around. If someone feels safe and they like you, they want to hang around you a little bit more, well, then you're going to have a position where people actually want to spend a little bit more time, talking to you, listening to you, and maybe finding things funny about you. Personal stories then give away to the most obvious way is for you to watch comedy. Watch it on YouTube, watch it on Netflix, TV, movies, see stand-up comedy, immersing yourself in, comedy movies, immersing yourself in stand-up comedy TV series like specials that are on Netflix are really good at this. Watching the Montreal Comedy Festival stuff, the Just for Laughs on Channel 10. I think late on certain nights of the week, they have that as well. Immerse yourself in a world of comedy. It helps you to honestly see what it is that people find funny, what it is that people, look at and find to be generally hilarious in the world. Then look also about what context is. Understand what the rise and the fall is. There's certain things, particularly topical things, that you can laugh about for a certain period of time, but after a while, they're not funny anymore. So things can sort of be, you can laugh around, you know, personal disasters, professional disasters, worldwide disasters, very large disasters, but there's a certain time when it's funny and there's a certain time when it's not funny. You can see those patterns in, when people say, "Oh, too soon," and actually mean, "Oh, that's way too soon." When there's something to laugh at, it could be a story about a sports person, it could be a story about a celebrity, and in some really dark cases, stories about the deaths of sports personalities and celebrities and all that sort of thing. Learning timing is a great way to learn how to place context into things. So, for instance, is this a good time to joke about, protests? Is this a good time to be joking about vegans? Is this a good time to be joking about the silly things that humanity does? Is it appropriate to be laughing about climate change and the people who are protesting about it? Then knowing when the right context is there and the right crowd as well. And most important of all, knowing when something just is not funny. Just because something's topical, just because people are talking about something, does not necessarily make it funny. In fact, that could be the time or that could be the thing that is absolutely not even the slightest bit funny at all. It could be completely unfunny to be sharing a joke about that particular thing. This is one great thing that I deliver time and time again when when I'm doing workshops that I deliver over and over again. So repeated workshops that sort of start off. I might do one in January, one in February, two in March, two in April, one in May, three in June. If I'm doing repeated things in different audiences, I have these one stories that I tell, and they're quite often funny stories that place me as the idiot at the center of them. Or they could be stories about failures that I've had. Now, in the case of these, you can only generally tell these stories once, otherwise they become very old. Examples of where there's comedians out there who tell these stories over again and again and again, and they don't take into account they told this same story to the same crowd last year. Were people like Jamoan, who's been telling the same jokes for 30 years. The guy's been really telling the same stuff in the same accent and not really explaining much about anything else, new material, anything. Just telling the same jokes with occasionally different characters over and over again. He's learned the art of having one story that you tell well. You can repeat jokes to different audiences, but probably not to the same audience. So if you go and visit a crowd of people who want to come and see you in Nowra in New South Wales, and then you have that one story you tell then, you cannot really tell that same story to the same crowd next year, because remember, a lot of people are taking along their friends who didn't see you last year, but those people who were there last year saw it and they want to see something new, not just the same old stuff they saw last year. You can refine your story, you can expand your story, you can even embellish it in the name of humor if you like and if it's needed. But of course, we're bringing this all in the context of business. So when it comes to business, what is that one story you can tell over and over again? It could be the stories of professional failure. It could be stories of professional success. It could be stories about when you had such a spectacularly awesome thing happen that you couldn't help but share that great news with everybody. So when you're telling these kind of stories and you repeat them over and over, just make sure that when people hear this story, it's not so vastly different from one telling to the next that people who share the story online or to their friends go, wait a second, he told that completely different last time. Which brings us then to watching how others do things, watching and listening for what other people find funny. So this is not necessarily watching them watch TV or watching them watch comedy shows, but it can be. You can see what it is that other people find funny and listening for ways that the person who delivered in such a funny way. Let's say, for example, we're looking at a staff meeting of the regional of a company you may work for. So you go and do this staff meeting. You're watching and listening for what other people are finding funny. The charismatic manager walks in the room who's cracking jokes and being familiar with everybody in a very appropriate way. They're not being inappropriate. They're being quite appropriate and very generic about it all. And they're the person who sort of lights up the room and sort of makes it so that the icebreakers are there and everyone feels a lot more comfortable. It certainly breaks any sort of tension that might be in the room. Now, when that person does what they do, listen for how they're delivering it. Listen for how they recall old stories from old things having passed. A good comedian, a person who's funny also remembers a lot of stuff that goes on. They understand that there's stories that can be told again and again and again because they are funny in a generic way. They're funny to almost everyone who could possibly find them funny. So we're talking about the ability then for people to go, okay, you know what? There is a certain way they deliver this. There's a certain way that they look at people. But then after all that, you've discovered all the things that make it funny. You also need to listen for who doesn't find it funny. Who is it that is sitting in the corner thinking, oh my God, this guy is such a douche. Oh my God, he thinks he's so funny and he's so, look at all those idiots. They're just crawling up to him. Look at the kind of people then who sit in the corner and don't find that funny. All this is instructional for you to understand what it is that makes generally things funny to the biggest possible crowd, and then looking out for those who may not be impressed or might even be completely and utterly, disgusted by it even. They might even find that it's not just not funny, but it's actually offensive to them. This is all very instructional when you start to make your move into being a funnier person as well. Being funny is also about being authentic. Don't be mean. Tell stories that you know. Tell stories about yourself and learn the art of self-effacement. It's where you turn the joke in on yourself. The fact is that I'm sitting here in a motel room because I had to book a trip at very short notice in a town that's very, very busy with lots of travelers and tourists going through it and not many rooms available. I actually accidentally booked 2 rooms. So in a town of which all the accommodation is, at the moment being overpriced, I booked 2 rooms. So thankfully they spotted it when I got in last night. Didn't just go, oh yeah, so you want both rooms? They went, did you accidentally book 2 rooms? Like, yeah, I did. Great, we'll refund you the one you extra booked. So my stupidity and my mistake ended up, being a funny way of me telling a story behind them where I said, you know what, I was up at about 3 o'clock that morning and I did not know which way. I was walking around in the dark, actually kicked my shins and made them bleed and fell over at one point. And I thought I might have even broken my collarbone, but no, I was okay. It's just a bit bruised. And then I booked a motel room in Alice because, that's the thing you do at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it made for a story where we all had a bit of a laugh and it broke the tension about a very silly mistake that I happened to make. Um, Not being mean is being authentic because when you're mean and you're picking on a particular person or a particular set of people or making stereotypes about minorities, you're not being authentic, you're not being funny, you're actually being racist, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, biphobic, transphobic. You're just picking on people, and that's not funny. It's funny for about a minute. But if the kind of people who are adults who laugh at that kind of thing are stuck in this stage of being 12-year-olds, it's not funny and it's making you look like a dick. So sorry for using that swear word, but it's making you look like a dick. Stop judging. Judging is the one thing that kills comedy, analysis and over-analysis and overthinking and judgment and looking at other people and looking down your nose at them and thinking that you're somehow superior to them. All this stuff, it really doesn't help the whole process of comedy because when you're busy judging things, you're not noticing what's actually funny out there. You're not looking at the humor. You're only looking at something that you can judge, something that you can go, you know what, I don't like that. Oh, look at her. Who does she think she is? You're not seeing the humor in it. All you're doing is being critical. And critical thinking is the enemy of funny thinking. You can also improve your vocabulary. This is really important because it allows you to play funny games with words. So you can talk about, no, I was sitting here waiting to lose weight. Um, and by that, we wanted to make sure that we're able to, make sure that we're able to, um, do all sorts of things where we are, you know, using words in different contexts. So words that sound the same, spelt differently, and are used differently. We can also use things like, look at this, swamp between meaning, swap between the meanings of the words. So jump in and out of the meanings of words. But even better when you can use words that people don't understand, and then you use those words out of context, using words in such a way as mixed metaphors is the whole humor behind Kath and Kim. It's where you're using, saying that you're up the tree without a paddle, or you're not a pretty face, Kimmy, when you're saying, oh, you're not just a pretty face. Oh, you're not a pretty face, are you? Taking those general ways of using words, dropping a word or replacing a word means that you're able to build in such a way that you're able to deliver something really funny just by playing with a few words. So improving your vocabulary gives you a lot more words to be able to play with. Believing in yourself means having a growth mindset. By having a growth mindset, you understand that it takes time to learn things. You understand that there's abundance in the world, and you understand that by doing this funny thing and taking a chance, you're not going to die. You may embarrass yourself for a moment. You go, and then that's the whole thing. If you deliver a line really badly and someone doesn't laugh, you go, wow, that really fell flat. I thought that sounded a lot funnier in my head than what it was. People then are a lot more forgiving about that, and they realize, oh, you were just trying to be funny. Okay, I kind of understand. I kind of get that. So asking about these sort of things, understanding there's growth and there's learning and there's abundance, and asking, will you die if you don't deliver this right, will help you to be a lot more of a risk taker and to deliver a lot more jokes like these. Seeing the funny side of life is where you find humor in all around you. I'm finding humor in the fact that I'm in a particularly cold part of Australia right now. It's going to get down to 2 degrees again tonight. I brought a couple of jackets with me. I should be fine. But there's no heater in this room. There's just an air conditioner because, I'm in Alice Springs. Why would they need a heater in Alice Springs in the middle of a hot desert? Yeah, it's hot desert at certain times of the year, but I tell you right now, it ain't a hot desert. It didn't get above about 19 degrees today at its absolute maximum. So it wasn't particularly warm here to a person who's from the tropics like I am. But not having heating in the room is quite hilarious. So what I was doing last night, I was basically grabbed the spare blanket that they had in the cupboard, wrapped it around me while I was working on the computer. I looked like a Jedi warrior with my hood on, kind of like this, and a bit like Quasimodo there. But it was hilarious what it was. And then when I got on a Zoom call with a friend, of course, it sounded even funnier because they're, what the hell are you doing, mate? You look like an idiot. And so you need to see the funny side in life and understand situational comedy. And that's what's short for what you might know as a sitcom, a situational comedy. It looks at the funny things that happen in a relatively normal day. Sitcoms are things like Will and Grace, a normal day in the day of Will and Grace, finding what's so funny about the adventures they go on. Seinfeld, an example of the sitcom, very much so. Friends is the example of the sitcom, where it's a normal day in the life of the friends, and we find all sorts of funny things going on. In Seinfeld, it's like the funny things about nothing. So they'd be playing on words, they'd be playing on situations and going, what did you do that for? Why do we do this? And asking questions that are calling to attention the fact that this is something that's just like, we do this all the time. Why do we do this? When did we start doing this? Is there a reason why we're doing this? And the questions become part of the humor. It helps you to see what other people see humor in as well. So when you're looking for the funny things, if you're walking around town, look, I want to notice something funny, and you notice, someone carrying too many shopping bags, and you think, wow, they could have actually done that in 2 trips, or they could have gone, you know what? Maybe it was a time when you should have probably just gone and done a smaller shop earlier in the week, and you start to find the humor in the way people act, because we are, as humans, absolutely hilarious. Get yourself a humor buddy. share jokes and share memes and practice with each other and be each other's sets of ears to make sure that you're able to get those things done right. I've got a humor buddy who I often try on things with. We share memes with each other. He is like literally less, even more than half my age, less than half my age. So he sees humor from a very different point of view and through a very different lens to what I do. So I often will practice these things and say, hey, if you were to hear this, would it be funny? If I was to send you this, would it be funny? And we'll share memes we kind of get from each other. We are each other's sets of ears and eyes, so we can make sure that we're not necessarily letting our jokes fall on completely flat ears because we want to make sure that, you know, we may not be the funniest people on the planet, but at least we understand that when something has got a context of being funny or not being funny. So, some ideas for you and your business could be just that you're looking at the idea of going, how in the hell am I going to take all this in and be funnier in what I do? So, what I will be doing is start off with picking out some of the funnier moments of things that happen around your business. Oh, I dropped that coffee. Take the photo of it, own up to it, express it to the world that you dropped the coffee. Said someone didn't take their wake up pills this morning. Writing on a funny chalkboard a quote, repeating a joke that you heard on television last night into a meme that you're putting into. Putting a bit of humor in there doesn't mean you have to be the laughing stock, and it doesn't mean you have to be the hottest comedian in town either. It just means that you're going to take a lighter view of life. You're not always going to look at today is going to be a sunny day with a top of 19, and there'll be winds light from the south southeast. You're actually looking at going, well, it might rain today, it might not rain today. I took an umbrella anyway because you never know. If it doesn't rain, at least I've got something to whack someone over the head with. So just little things you see in it every day. Write them down, try them on for size with someone who's safe, and then turn them into something that's part of your corporate communications. So that could be bringing you then to newsletters that you're sending out, having a bit of humor, laughing at the situations that are happening, laughing at political news, laughing at the actual news that's happening, laughing at the weather, laughing at anything you can in order to lighten the mood, to start a conversation. People start conversations when they lighten the mood and they feel safe to be able to talk. So, are you ready to dive in a little deeper to the whole world of comedy with what you're doing? So I do this quite a lot, even though this wasn't a particularly funny presentation. It wasn't actually meant to be a funny presentation. It was meant to be an introduction to some of the ideas around how to be a little cooler and a little bit funnier and a little bit less staid and stiff in the way that you're communicating through your business. So you can do that by going on to an ASBAS Digital Solutions consultation. Now, your first one is not going to cost you anything. Your second consult, $44. The third, $66 until the end of July. So if you're in Queensland, Western Australia, or the Northern Territory, you can qualify for this particular program while they're rewriting the concept for the next program for ASBAS. So first consult, absolutely free if you never had one before. Your second, $44. Third, and any after that, $66 until the end of July 2021. So what are you waiting for? Popping in over to asbas.com.au, or if you'd like a bit of guided through it, you can get in touch with me through dante@treaty.com.au and stalk me as much as you possibly want to on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, either which way, follow me. It's going to help me with my stats and it's going to make me look better to all those platforms. So I don't really care if you stalk me over there because it's going to make me look good any which way. asbas.com.au, dante@treaty.com.au. I'd like to thank you for taking some time out to, I guess, spend some time working on your business, not just working in your business, because I know that it just takes a lot of work and it get really hard to get that business running. So taking a little bit of time out to learn some funny stuff is really good for you. Thank you and have a great evening.